Welcome to Urban Forum Northwest with your host, Eddie Rye. We have a very special guest on. As a matter of fact, she has one of the hottest books in America called Dick Gregory. Stay Awake and Stay Woke. Give it to me, Dr. Ife Williams, the proud
wake
publisher.
Wake up and stay woke. Yeah, you got to wake up before you stay woke, right?
So yeah,
well,
and you know the thing about it is that you spent so much time with Dick Gregory, in many battles. So you probably knew him as well as anyone before he got out of here, other than probably his wife and his daughter. But you spent so much time in these fights with him.
People often ask me, well, there's so many things out there about Dick Gregory. What makes your book different from all the others? I said, well, he wrote some of the others, and other people researched him and wrote about him, but I lived this with him that I wrote about.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss. I got to let people know that Dr. Ife Williams is president and CEO of the National Congress of Black Women Incorporated out of Washington, D.C., and she also hosts a radio program in D.C. She's also a national news columnist with Tice Edney Wire, and you can frequently see her column in the Seattle Medium newspaper. So I want to make sure people know about that too. And then she will also let us know later on how you can procure a copy of this book. But I'm glad that you were able to pull over en route to Atlanta from D.C., Dr. Ife, to take this call, because it's very important. Before we went on the air, I'll show you about how proud I was of the sisters that stood up in Washington, D.C., getting handcuffed to accentuate our need and our right to vote, and what we need to do all across this country is stand up for our rights.
I was out there, didn't take the handcuffs that time, but of course they know that I would have. I was on my way to Houston to do a book signing, and I didn't want to disappoint them. But I have not just put the handcuffs on. I've gone to jail with Dick Gregory.
I remember when they used to put Dick Gregory out of jail in Tacoma. He'd go on a hunger strike when he was helping the Indian tribes with their fishing rights stuff in the 60s. Yes, he and Mrs. Gregory spent a lot of time back here. But what I really want to do is shift gears and have you talk about this book and just go into some more details, because like I said, you had a very interesting relationship in doing shoulder-to-shoulder work with Dick Gregory, seeking justice for folks like the BP disaster down in the Gulf Coast, going all the way to London, England, to their headquarters to protest their lack of action. So if you could share some of those stories, we certainly would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I first met him in Louisiana when I was running for the United States Congress. He came down with Congressman Mervyn Dimely from California. He was visiting his daughter at Louisiana State University, and he came over to one of my campaign events. And when he did, I continued to talk about my mother. My mother taught me this. My mother taught me that. And when I finished, he came up on the stage. He says, I got to talk to your mother because my children don't listen to me for anything. I think the only way that I get to talk with them is to pull my chair up by the refrigerator. And that's when I get to talk with them. But I got to see how your mother does it. And then we came back to Washington, where he lived already, and I had just graduated from law school. So he called me one evening to come and pick him up in Baltimore. Well, that was in the middle of evening traffic, so I wasn't real happy about that. But we came back to my house, and he decided he was going to teach some of his friends and me how to make veggie burgers. And, of course, he put a lot of cheese on it, and I don't know, that might have taken away the health benefit that time. But then he wanted to show me how to wash dishes, and all of this is a surprise to his family because they didn't know he knew how to wash dishes. But it was a long story. And then we began picketing, protesting. We would find out where things were going on. We would be invited to various things. In fact, we were invited to so many protests to help people that we kept signs for everything in the trunk of our cars. We could just stop and say, what are you picketing about? And go to the trunk of our cars, get the sign out, whether it was peace, human rights, food, minimum wage, voter registration, voter education. It didn't matter what it was. Then when the British Petroleum had that explosion down near New Orleans, people were afraid to actually file for their losses. So we took a 2-week trip across the South. We went to Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, all over, showing people how they could apply to get, reimbursed for the losses they had when all of that oil came ashore and they lost their businesses. Some of them even lost their lives. And when we couldn't get any respect from the British Petroleum, which, by the way, is all over our neighborhoods, and we should remember that because they weren't very kind to the people, but we decided to just go all through of the South and teach people to file their claims at any rate. And we had an interesting time because I thought we were going to drive. Well, it turned out that we would get into a town and he would wake up and say, "You want me to drive?" But I was already there. I had my first experience driving with him in an SUV and stopping by alligator ponds and everything. When we couldn't get any satisfaction, we went to London, where the headquarters of British Petroleum exists. And, of course, I'm a lawyer, but I didn't know the laws of London, so we picketed for a while, but then we decided we shouldn't stay too long. They wouldn't allow us in the building. They sent us back to the United States and told us who to talk with, and we continued to negotiate, and we're still negotiating some settlements and some assistance for people in their communities.
Can you give our listening audience some kind of ideas of how kind of resolution some people received?
I'm sorry, how what?
What the compensation? You said people did receive compensation from BP?
Well, mainly people who own large businesses got it because they had lawyers and they persisted and they got theirs. Others, there were a few things that were put into communities to help people, but very few people got, individual subsistence or anything like that. So it just shows that large corporations can just run over poor people and not have to do anything with them because generally they don't have the money to go to court, as these large businesses do. But many of the large businesses did get compensated for their damages, but very few of the small people, as you would say, who had those small fish fry kind of businesses along the water and those who were babysitting for people who were out fishing and what have you. That's an unfortunate thing about our society. Them that's got shall get so often, and the others are left behind. But we haven't given up. Art Rocker, who is from Florida, and I continue to try to get assistance for some of those people. And this happened way back in, 2011, I believe. And some of them are still having challenges with their health and with their businesses from that time. So, we just decide you can never give up. When they say no, we say we just keep going, and that's what we've been doing.
Well, I think that one thing, I'm going to mention this to a couple of members of the Congressional Black Caucus, but I really think that it's time for us to not allow the black country of Haiti to be in the condition that it's in, not being that in the Western Hemisphere. And they're in that condition because when Toussaint overthrew the French government at that time, the French came in with all these battleships and demanded, and the United States agreed with them, and forced Haiti to pay what would be equivalent to $21 billion in reparations because they lost their slaves in the textile industry. So I think it's time for that to be an international issue, and the United States needs to be in the front of it, led by NBCW, led by the National Congress of Black Women and the Congressional Black Caucus. There's no way we should allow a country like that to happen. As a matter of fact, France needs to put money in right now. We need to appeal to countries all around the world, including the Chinese. I don't care what anybody says. We need to build Haiti back up. There's just a shame for them to be treated that way just because they're black. We know why.
Well, absolutely. And the same is true for here. I serve on the National African American Reparations Commission, and we're still fighting to get reparations here in this country, too. But right now it is more critical for the people, as you said, of Haiti, because they've had to give up so much, to the French and to others. Many of these countries are still dominating what were once their so-called colonies. So we need to put an end to that. I've been to Haiti several times. I was there actually when President Aristide was, had his house ransacked. Unfortunately, I haven't been back to Haiti, but I know that conditions there were very bad simply because the French are still controlling as much as they can goods into and out of Haiti.
Well, I tell you what, black folks, and actually this whole reparations thing can go up to all of the countries that were colonized, all up and down the Western Hemisphere. And
Absolutely.
All folks need to be going back to those other countries asking for the reparations. But France needs to take the lead. The United States needs to be shoulder to shoulder because the United States helped enforce Haiti to be in a position to say, Haiti doesn't have infrastructure because you took all their damn money, through paying because you disrupted slavery. and you're going to disrupt the sin. You're going to get paid for disrupting a sin. Now, the whole world needs to be looking at this, and I really hope that your organization, along with the Congressional Black Caucus and Wade Henderson's organization and others, the NAACP, Urban League, everybody, it's just a shame for that to be happening.
Ron Daniels, too,
yes,
Institute of the Black World, has been working very hard on that, I must say. Well, we're doing what we can. We're having such a struggle in Washington because that orange man still thinks he's going to be coming back into the White House next month, and I think there are a lot of Republicans who think that he's going to be coming back and being in control. But we have to fight very hard, first of all, to get the John Lewis Act, the voting rights, to get those rights returned to us that we once had. And that's why my program is so critical, called Wake Up and Stay Woke. Sometimes we wake up to do something like we did in voting, and then, of course, some of us went back to sleep. So here we are all fighting just to have fair voting. There's a H.R. 1. We got to work to get that reinstated so that all these negative things like what's going on in Texas right now and many other places around the country, we have to fight to make sure we have fair voting and not allow the Republicans, because that's who's doing it, to take this away from us.
Okay, Dr. Ife, we're out of time. Congratulations on your book. And,
all right, and it's on Amazon.com. It's just called Dick Gregory, Wake Up and Stay Woke. And, of course, you know how to call me if somebody has a question that you can't answer.
I certainly will do that, Dr. Ife. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Eric, do we have Dr. Carl Mack on? Dr. Mack, how you doing? I'm doing great. I'm sure glad you're able to get with us.
Yes, sir.
I put also an email that I put out that about your article, which was on the July 7th edition of the Seattle Medium newspaper front page article, because I didn't have, that way people can go and read the article in its entirety, because it does give a little historical background as well. But as you know, I've been working almost in the same arena as you, but you got folks' attention already. So why don't you share with our listeners about, we've had your Black History calendars forever and a day, and now you're going to go and make sure they get digitized with Google. So, and you have a partnership with Google for them to use your Black History calendar. So why don't you go ahead and share with our listeners exactly how this came about, and let them know what they need to do to support it.
All right. So, Eddie, I'm actually going through just a little area that may cut me out, but that area is going to be breezy. So in case I cut out, I'll get right back on it.
Well, I asked Eric in the studio, I said, just in case he cut out, have his homeboy, Congressman Benny Thompson, on hold for us. But go ahead. We had him on 2 weeks ago, talk about the hearing tomorrow. But go right ahead, brother.
Oh, good. Well, if I didn't cut out then, I think I'm past the danger spot. But anyway, listen, Eddie, you and I we go back a ways, man. And I've been such an admirer of your body of work in our community, and it's just an honor. And again, had the pleasure of working with your wonderful daughter Angela when she was at Holy Names. And so, man, your body of work is beyond respectable. So it's just a great job, and I'm honored to hook up with you again. But in regards to into the calendar, I first started doing this back in 1992, and the idea actually came to me in 1990. The first calendar came out in 92. But the reason it came out, and I was an engineer at Metro, and I worked with this white guy who was an engineer named Henry Cody. And Cody would come to work often, and he would talk about different people out of Black history. So one day he came in and he was talking to me about this guy named Henry O'Flipper. And O'Flipper was the first Black to graduate from the West Point Military Academy. And Henry's a beautiful brother, but I had no idea who Cody was talking about. And Cody was looking at me like I absolutely knew who he was talking about. And so I felt embarrassed and ashamed that this white man knew far more about my culture and history than I did. And so one day, guy put it in my head, Carl, you got this Word of the Day calendar. What if you could make a Black History calendar featuring a person for every day of the year? So my first calendar, I published it in 1992. And so this is the 4th edition. But unlike any of the other calendars, on this edition, every day is significant to that person that's on that day. So, for instance, today, on July 22nd, 1939, James Matilda Bolden from New York, Mayor LaGuardia appointed her to a judgeship, which made her the first black woman judge in United States history. And that was in 1939. And in 1931, she was the first black woman to graduate from the Yale School of Law. So every day, somebody is featured out of black history, and they're significant to that day. So when I did the calendar, one of my former students works at he works with Google. So I just sent him a copy of the calendar just so he could take a look at it. And unbeknownst to me, Google was looking for something where they can have every day something out of black history. But they wanted it specific to that day. So when they saw my calendar, this sister from Australia, who's a part of the Google team, she gave me a call, and she said, look, we would love to license the content of your calendar because we've been looking everywhere, and we can't find anything in which every day there's something specific to that person in black history. So we set up a licensing agreement, and so right now, if you have an iPhone, you can download the Google Assistant app. If you have the Android phone, I think the Google Assistant app is preloaded on your phone. But if you go to your Google Assistant app on your phone, or if you got the home device, so Google actually sent me a home device. So every morning I'll walk downstairs, and as I'm getting my coffee, I say, hey, Google, what happened on this day in black history? And the Google Assistant, at that point begins to read to me what happened on that day in black history. And at the end of it, they'll say, adapted from Black Heritage Day 4 by author, civil rights activist, Dr. Carl Mack. So the first time my sons heard it, they were like, Dad, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, no, that's all over the world. Somebody could hear that now, which is pretty amazing. So that's the short of it.
And but very timely, too. Very, very timely.
Yeah, no doubt. And so, the other part that they're talking to me about now, Eddie, is so as I'm talking to the sister from Australia, she goes, with Dr. Mack, you have a very unique voice. So would you consider entering a contractual agreement where you would actually read the snippet for the Black History feature of the day? I said, absolutely. If you think that'll work. So right now I'm talking to Google, and hopefully if all goes well, when you ask Google what happened on this day in black history, you'll hear my voice instead of that of the Google Assistant, which would be kind of cool.
I think it'd be real cool. Real deserving too. Right on. That's great.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get have Alexa saying the same thing, right?
I know it. I'd love to.
Alexa give you Shirley Chisholm every day.
Every day. So, the other thing, so I almost had the big two. So I had Google to come in, and so there was the president of the Smithsonian saw my calendar, and she actually called me. I sent her copies of the calendar, and we were very close to doing a deal, and we were going to rebrand the calendar. Instead of it just being Black Heritage Day, it would be Black Heritage Day and the Smithsonian. So they were very, very impressed with the calendar. Hadn't seen anything like it, and I think most people who have seen Black Heritage Day calendars, it's hard to imagine all of that information inside of a calendar. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, things kind of fell apart, and that deal didn't go through. But there's always next year, right? But the other thing is, I just finished a Black Heritage Day 5 calendar, and it'll be the last one that I plan to do. And this one, Eddie, I think you'll be real impressed with, because this one, so when I finished Black Heritage Day 4, I was just a little disappointed that I didn't have an equal mixture of black men to black women. And so I decided, okay, Carl, let's do it one last calendar, except Black Heritage Day 5 is 366 days, all black women. So that's the one that I just finished.
That'll be when are you going to release that one?
That I don't know yet. Literally, okay. It's just sitting there on my computer, and I hadn't done anything with it.
A couple of months earlier, it could have been a Mother's Day release.
Yeah. So, I just got to put the pieces to it. But literally, the entire write-up is done, and literally, I think I got every 365 women are on days significant in their life. There was one day that I could not find, and so this sister in Seattle by the name of Vicky White. I think you may have remembered Vicky White. She was my secretary when I was with the NAACP.
Right. I do remember Vicky.
Yeah. So Vicky said, "Hey, Carl, don't worry about it. Why don't we just make that particular day every woman's day?" So I'm going to probably do some write-up or have Vicky to do a write-up where we just write something generic about women, right? But every other woman that's in the calendar is on a day significant in their life. And I thought the contributions of black men were incredible. But, man, when you read about these sisters and their body of work, it is just, I mean, there were a couple of pages that literally, it just left me in tears to read about the courage and wherewithal of these sisters. It's just absolutely amazing.
And I'm going to remind everybody, you can go to the Seattle Medium's website. July 7th edition of the Seattle Medium has Dr. Carl Mack and his agreement with Google, use the Google Assistant for the Black History Calendar. His Black History Calendar is on that very extensive article, very well done. So how can people go about getting additional information? I just gave them how they can get the news article, but I was just trying to figure out, and how can your homies support you in your endeavor?
Well, thank you so much, Eddie.
Because you have a whole bunch of folks that, like, I can think about that group of holy names when they wouldn't allow them to have a black student union, and Angela we came and got you, and they had a black student union. So you got a whole posse at Leonetta Espy and Catherine Bush Felton these days. She's married to the president of Wiley College, Herman Felton.
Correct.
Yeah. So anyway, you got a whole posse of folks like that's out here. So.
And speaking of Wiley College, for those who may not know, Michael Tolson is from Wiley College, and I think that's his first name, but a certain last name, Tolson. And if that name doesn't ring a bell to you, just relate that name to Denzel Washington. And if that doesn't ring a bell to you, this is the guy who started the group, The Great Debaters. So the movie The Great Debaters is about Brother Tolson, and he was at Wiley College when he put together the debate team that ended up being an all-black debate team that won the national championship. And, yes, he's featured in Black Heritage Day 4, so he's in the calendar, yeah. But anyway.
Wiley was close to Shreveport. It was right across the river. It was in Marshall, Texas?
God, I got to remember.
I know it's close by because we had relatives that went over there. So, but anyway, we just about out of time, Dr. Carl Mack. I'd like to have you make any comments you'd like to make in closing, including steering people on how they can support this calendar being used by everybody with your voice behind it.
Great. So listen, if you want to get a copy of the calendar, you can go to my website, and it's blackheritagedays.com. All one word, blackheritagedays.com. The cost of the calendar is $19.99. It's free shipping. I needed the calendar to be incredibly affordable, and it is a money-back guarantee. So I guarantee when you get the calendar, if you don't like it, you don't have to send it back. Just tell me you don't like it, and I'm going to refund your money. It's that simple. But I think you'll absolutely love it.
I think number one is I think that the churches, the sororities, fraternities, the breakfast group, the Esquires, I think they need to be buying them in bulk and sharing them with people that can't afford them, and also with young people, so they can start learning about their history right away. So I think it's a valuable tool, and it's a good investment for these organizations to do things in the community. So I'll see about that myself, sir, to help do some marketing.
You know, Eddie, and the other thing I'll say to people is, you know, when I was doing this calendar, it was as up-to-date of current event as you'll find. So, for instance, in the calendar on May 25th, you're going to find
George Floyd.
On August 11th, you're going to find Vice President Harris, Kamala Harris, right? Because that was the day that Joe Biden nominated her as his running mate. the death of John Lewis. So as things were happening in this country of a major historic nature, I was literally finding a way to include them on that day in Black history. So in the case of George Floyd, actually on that day, I had Jesse Owens, because Jesse Owens had the greatest day in sports at the beginning.
Okay, but Dr. Mack, we're out of time, brother. Me and you could go on forever. But I got Dr. Jeffrey standing pat, trying to get some land repatriated that the city took doing urban renewal or Black removal. So I'm on that battlefield too. Thank you very much, Dr. Mack. We're going to stay in touch.
A pleasure. And James Kelly wanted me to say hello to you.
All right. Tell James I said hello.
I will do it.
Okay, Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come back with Reverend Robert L. Jeffrey Sr., New Hope, Black Dollar Days Task Force, Clean Greens Farm and Market, and New Hope Housing Development Corporation.
Hi, my name is Mian Rice, the Diversity and Contracting Director for the Port of Seattle. As a public agency, the Port of Seattle serves the community, and our investments should benefit everyone who lives and works here. The Port is committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and to leveling the playing field. That means continuing to open doors to contracting opportunities to all, especially women and minority-owned and disadvantaged businesses. How can you participate? List your business in Vendor Connect, a database of contractors. Attend PortGen workshops to learn how to do business with the Port. Learn more about contracting opportunities at portseattle.org. For more information on operating a concessions at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, visit lease.ctacshops.com.
Why sit in bumper-to-bumper traffic when you can hop on Link Light Rail and fly by the gridlock? It's a smoother, easier, stress-free way to get where you want to go. Whether you're heading north to Capitol Hill and the University of Washington or south to Columbia City, Tukwila, and the airport, Link Light Rail will get you there quickly and safely. And if you have an ORCA card, even better. Just tap on the yellow card reader when you get on and listen for the beep to let you know your card has been accepted. Then tap your card reader again once you've reached your destination and listen for the double beep to let you know you've tapped off correctly. To find the closest Link Light Rail station or to learn how to get an ORCA card, just go to soundtransit.org and type Link Light Rail into the search bar. Sound Transit's Link Light Rail. Just another way that Sound Transit is powering progress.
Talk radio with a purpose. Alternative Talk 1150.
All right, hey, right back at Urban Forum Northwest with my next guest. And he is a distinguished gentleman, a great leader. And if you look at the front page of the Seattle Times this morning, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Reverend Robert L. Jeffrey Sr., senior pastor of New Hope Missionary Baptist Church, founder of the Black Dollar Days Task Force, founder of the Clean Greens Farm and Market, and the New Hope Housing Development Corporation. I believe I have that right, sir. But anyway, we have, the community is supporting his efforts to have the city repatriate some land that was taken during what they call urban renewal. I call it Black removal, one of the most successful programs ever, which displaced Black people out the central area. So Reverend Jeffrey, congratulations on your stamina, on your fight. And brother, I have your back because you're doing it for the right reason to help a lot of people who are in need. So why don't you give our listeners an update on exactly where we are today?
Okay, where we are today is that we will get a recommendation or a resolution before the council sometime in August to resolve this issue. Hopefully it will be resolved. But what we're doing is by demanding that they return this land, we're quantifying the whole issue of Black removal and Black land taking. And I think that we have to begin to quantify this in our community. I mean, what actually has this cost us in terms of our brain trust, our resources, and those kinds of things. And so in this small instance, we believe that we need to quantify the cost of them taking this land, not just from New Hope, but from the people on that block and in that area. So we have a rally coming up this Saturday.
Oh, go right ahead, Doctor. Sorry, go right ahead.
We have a rally coming up this Saturday at 12 o'clock, and that rally is to sort of articulate the issues of reparations and articulate the need for us to begin to quantify and begin to make a real concerted effort to talk about what the real cost is in terms of the process of land removal that has just taken place in the central area.
Now, Reverend Jeffrey, for the people that don't know, why don't you go back, if they haven't read the article today, which is in the Times, and let people know what happened. What happened was during, they said urban renewal. I call it black removal from day one. But just take our listeners back to let them know how the city even were able to take the land from New Hope Baptist Church.
Well, in 1961, the city began an urban renewal process in the central area. And in that process, they began to create committees to design that process. And the committees, the conclusions of those committees were that African Americans had to be removed. And they defined African Americans as ignorant, as the colored people, and as the people who were mostly criminals and mostly uneducated, and that they said that they should put them in a ghetto, remove them and place them in ghettos. And that process began in 1961. 69 was the time when they came and took the church from New Hope Baptist, took the land from New Hope Baptist Church. But it was a part of that whole process of black removal. So they didn't have any sense of respect for the church because they figured blacks wasn't going to be here anyway. And so they began to seize land all over the city.
Yeah, it was like 400 housing units that were where they had people relocate.
So in that within that period of time, and that's not even dealing with what subsequently happened during Weed and Seed. I mean, then of course, as it evolved forward, they begin to take other homes. So, I mean, it's really an operation that they begin to say that some of the black leaders supported urban renewal, and they may have, but I don't think that African American leadership at that time supported urban renewal, racist removal of black people. And I think that they just weren't paying close enough attention at the language that was put in these documents, language that targeted African Americans specifically, and targeted them in very derogatory and negative terms, like calling them the undeserving poor. I mean, where does that come from? Who would say something like that? But this is the kind of language in those documents.
Yes, and then in 73, as I mentioned at the press conference on Wednesday, in 1973, I chaired the Central Seattle Community Council Housing Federation's, the Housing Committee, and we released the first report on redlining of the central area and took all kinds of actions, and you would think that, would have got somebody's attention. We had late Reverend Gil Lloyd, Reverend McKinney, Reverend Cecil Chip Murray, and a lot of others. The sister that was chair of the Federation of Bernice Moreland, and painting red lines around the boundaries of the central area. And then in 1976, we painted a red line in front of the black box down at Seafirst. And so it got to the point where Secretary Gerald Ford sent the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development out here, Carla Hills, in 1976 to hear our concerns, but things went right along as they had been planned. And so I'm so glad that you're championing this whole effort, because what you're doing is it caused a lot of people to start talking to their parents, their grandparents, to talk about what happened to them and what happened to their property. And we might find a lot of...
They hid these documents deep in their archives. I mean, the evidence of their racist conspiracy was hidden deep into the archives downtown. And they felt like as long as you didn't have evidence that this was racially motivated, that what they were doing was racist, they could continue to do it on the basis of what they call capitalism and on what they call the market. And so they used the market driving this as their defense. This is market driven. This is not racist. This is market driven. But when you look at the language, this is primarily racially driven. And you know, we were talking at the news conference about the whole thing of eminent domain, and they're trying to say, well, we're against eminent domain. No, what we are against is weaponizing eminent domain, racially weaponizing it, so that you can come in and destroy a race, a whole group of people. You know, and I think as long as the motives are correct, that's fine. But you racially weaponize the whole concept of eminent domain as it relates to the central area. And so everything you do is suspect. Everything you have done since you racially weaponized it is suspect. And that's what we have to fall back on. And I think as long as they could get away with saying it wasn't racial, they were fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just trying to figure out, in terms of people in the community that seek justice, no matter who you are, if you seek justice, what can they do to support the church's efforts to regain the property? And you said you could build, I'm put several units on that property, affordable housing?
Build 87 units of apartment buildings. We're going to build an apartment building with 87 units in it. And we're going to build that regardless. We're going to do that. But, you know, we need that land. We need the land, or we need reparations for the land. So what they can do to help is come out to the rally on the 24th at 12 o'clock. We have a rally in the park on the 24th at 12 o'clock. And we need people there. We need people who care about these issues. And this is not just about New Hope, even though it is about New Hope. It's not just about New Hope. It is about exposing the racial origins, the racist origins of the removal of black people from the central area, and with documentation, their own words.
Reverend Jeffrey, what is the location of the park once again?
It's located on the corner of 3rd and 21st Avenue. They don't have an address there, but
I know. I'm just saying. I just want to make sure people. It's adjacent to the church itself. Right. Okay. Well, Reverend Jeffrey, you keep up the good work, and I'm supporting you all the way.
Thank you, man.
And hopefully other folks will step up.
You're going to speak, right? You're going to speak there, right?
What's that, sir?
You're going to speak at the rally, right?
Whatever you require from me, I'll definitely be there.
Yeah. Well, they need to hear what you just said about the redlining thing.
Okay, sir. I will do it.
Okay. Thanks, Eddie.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
All right.
Okay, Eric, we're going to take a quick break and come back with our next guest after this.
Hi, my name is Mian Rice, the Diversity and Contracting Director for the Port of Seattle. As a public agency, the Port of Seattle serves the community, and our investments should benefit everyone who lives and works here. The Port is committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and to leveling the playing field. That means continuing to open doors to contracting opportunities to all, especially women and minority-owned and disadvantaged businesses. How can you participate? List your business in Vendor Connect, a database of contractors. Attend PortGen workshops to learn how to do business with the Port. Learn more about contracting opportunities at portseattle.org. For more information on operating a concessions at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, visit lease.ctacshops.com.
Why sit in bumper-to-bumper traffic when you can hop on Link Light Rail and fly by the gridlock? It's a smoother, easier, stress-free way to get where you want to go. Whether you're heading north to Capitol Hill and the University of Washington or south to Columbia City, Tukwila, and the airport, Link Light Rail will get you there quickly and safely. And if you have an ORCA card, even better. Just tap on the yellow card reader when you get on and listen for the beep to let you know your card has been accepted. Then tap your card reader again once you've reached your destination and listen for the double beep to let you know you've tapped off correctly. To find the closest Link Light Rail station or to learn how to get an ORCA card, just go to soundtransit.org and type Link Light Rail into the search bar. Sound Transit's Link Light Rail. Just another way that Sound Transit is powering progress.
Talk radio that will get you thinking. Alternative Talk 1150.
Eddie Wright back at Urban Forum Northwest. I want to give a shout out to our supporters, and that would be the City of Seattle's Purchasing Construction Services Office with Liz Alzier and Company, the Port of Seattle's Diversity Contracting Office with me and Rice, Sound Transit with my next guest, John T. Robinson, who is the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, and that is also in the Office of Labor with my friend Leslie Jones. And John T., welcome to Urban Forum Northwest. And why don't you just take a minute or so and give our listeners a little bit about a little historical overview of John T. Robinson's background.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rye. Thank you for having me on your show. It definitely is a privilege to be here today. And so a little bit about John Tay. I am from a small town called Salisbury that's located on the eastern shore of Maryland. When I was in high school, I made a decision that I was going to serve the country and join the United States Army, which is how I ended up getting to this beautiful state of Washington. Being in the Army as a Black woman opened my eyes to a lot of things, which is why I made a decision to spend my life opening doors for those who are underrepresented, advocating for minorities and women, because some of the things that I saw and experienced were, it was very challenging and interesting. After my time in the Army, I worked for the state of Washington at the Washington State Department of Personnel, where I actually had an opportunity to work with the team from the governor's office to develop a leadership program to help human resource leaders identify discrimination and harassment in the workplace. And from there, I landed at the Washington State Department of Transportation, where I worked with their affirmative action program, oversaw their Title VI program, which consisted of over 275 subrecipients, and really ensuring that the subrecipients were building out projects in a way that was equitable. And from there, I landed here at Sound Transit, where I had the opportunity to work with Leslie Jones for a couple of years in the DBE Small Business Program. And now here I am as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
And why don't you share with our listeners some of your responsibilities? Because you are the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. So yes. Is that three different categories? How do you separate those, and what are the objectives and what are the goals that you've set?
So the vision so the office that I oversee is the Office of Civil Rights, Equity, and Inclusion. And the vision that I have is, to create a place where all Sound Transit employees, our passengers and community feel welcomed and are connected to what they need and have equitable access to opportunities, programs, and services. And so when I look at the diversity aspect of my role and position, of course, we know that diversity deals with representation, ensuring that, there's different people in the workplace and that we can celebrate those differences. Equity, is looking at our processes, our policies, our procedures, and ensuring that there is a level playing field so that everybody has access to job opportunities, programs, and services. And then inclusion deals with belonging and making sure that people feel safe to bring their whole selves to work. The way that I accomplish this, Mr. Rye, is through 4 different programs. So that's our economic development program, which really deals with eliminating barriers and creating opportunities for underrepresented business owners, and ensuring that the businesses that are building our transit system represent the communities that we serve. As you know, Sound Transit has the largest capital project program in the nation. And I think that it's very critical that the individuals who are getting contracts with us represent our community, and that it's done in an equitable manner. The second program that I oversee is Inclusive Culture, which deals with our employees and ensuring that we are embracing and celebrating individual and cultural differences, and that employees are receiving opportunities regardless of their race or gender, ability, etc., in the workplace. And Eddie, I feel like you want to ask me a question, and so I'm going to stop there.
No. Just keep going right ahead.
Okay.
I mean, this is for the sake of my listeners. I want them to get as much detail from you as possible.
Okay.
So they have a better insight as to what's going on in your office and at Sound Transit, because you're in a position that a lot of people I know that want to make sure that we're counted in those goals that you guys talk about.
Absolutely, yes. And so the third program that I oversee is Equity and Social Responsibility. And that program focuses on creating equitable access to opportunities, programs, and services. And so that's really focused on our community, our ridership, and ensuring that folks have access to our system, to ensure that we are engaging community as we are building projects, and making sure that they have a voice and a seat at the table as it relates to our decision making and things that are impacting them. And then we also, under my leadership, are really bringing some focus into social responsibility. And that's going to be done through our workplace giving campaigns, sponsorships, and volunteering. And so really just making sure that Sound Transit has a presence in the community that we are serving. And then the last thing that I oversee is compliance and monitoring, which deals with all of our civil rights program. I oversee our Equal Employment Opportunity Program, our Title VI program, as well as our Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, which are all federal compliance programs.
Let our listeners know what is Title VI? What does that mean, and who does it affect?
Yes, so Title VI is a part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and Title VI states that no person should be discriminated against based on race, color, or national origin as it relates to programs and services. And so how that applies to Sound Transit, and it manifests in many different ways. But for example, fare enforcement, which I know was a hot topic for some time, we should not be allowing our fare enforcement officers to target Black people who are riding our transit system and ask for fare. If that is happening, that is a violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, preventing someone from riding a bus because of how they look, the color of their skin, their accent. That is a violation of Title VI.
And you also mentioned the significance when you receive federal money, there are different requirements for the utilization of minorities.
Yes.
The problem we find out is that we're not the first person or group to be selected. And after 45 years of the DBE program and being under a prime contractor's foot, I can't think of very many Blacks that prospered under that arrangement because they were not getting their money directly. Yeah. Have you guys ever considered paying or breaking the contract? You have engineers that break the contracts down to fit the capacity of the smaller, especially I'll speak for firms owned by African descendants of the United States enslaved, the ones that's been here 400 years. Because I'm asking also members of Congress to see if we get a federal designation to ensure we participate in the country that we help build. And we are the most, and you serve in the military, we're the most patriotic group in this country. Have nobody came back from several wars of discrimination and racism and still held the flag up. So Some people say, oh, you want something for nothing. No, we just want a return on our 400-year investment,
Right.
254 years for free. So I am not embarrassed at all to ask for a federal designation for African descendants. And I think the same thing's going to be happening in the West and Central America and everywhere else where Black people talking to the countries that colonized them, like Haiti. I mean, you know, to have Haiti pay that much money is just ridiculous. But anyway, I got off topic.
Yeah, no,
but
that's okay.
Because I just want to, the position you're in, I'd like to at least have you on at least quarterly.
Yes.
Or if there's any kind of big thing going on in Sound Transit, you have, this is a format that you can use for that purpose. And so that's why I'm on there, to make sure that folks that listen to this program about our people, African descendants of the United States enslaved, and our friends, they hear directly from us. Well, John Tay, is there anything you'd like to say before we part to Congressman Benny Thompson for that hearing coming up tomorrow that he's chairing on the January 6th insurrection?
Yes, I actually have one thing that I want to say to our listeners. So one of the things that Sound Transit is doing as we are welcoming back our ridership is we want to ensure that everybody has access to vaccinations. And so on July the 30th, we will be hosting a vaccination site at Union Station in Seattle from 10:30 to 6 p.m., which will be open to the public. I will be there. And so I'm inviting you all, if you need to be vaccinated, to come out and be vaccinated.
Thank you very much, John T. Robinson. That is much needed with this new Delta variant that's kicking people's behind.